You know, every Sunday I get to see your faces when I step out and I do the meditation, but somehow when I step up here and I get to take in the whole view, it's even better. I don't know why that is, but did you experience that? You get up here and you see everybody and you get the whole image and everybody just kind of shines. So I'm very grateful that you're all here with me to give me this view. Now, if you're new, if you haven't been coming for a while, you're in for something really big. We've been tackling some extremely important stuff over the last few months. So you will want to go to our Facebook or YouTube and check out all 5 talks that we did on getting into the now, as well as the first 3 talks on overcoming judgment. This is talk 4 of that judgment series. Why should you go back and listen to the old stuff? No. Although it is lovely that it will drive our numbers and it will boost our exposure. The reason that you want to do that is because we're doing several different series of talks and we're doing them in a very specific order. If you really want to get your hands on every tool in the toolbox, you need to go back and pick them up, right? Each talk is important to our month-to-month transformation, and each subject's teachings from A to Z are important. They all fit together and flow into each other. You need the 5 talks in the now to become fully present. You need to be fully present to overcome judgment. You need to be fully present and judgment-free to separate from ego in our next series. And then you need to be fully present, judgment-free, and have your ego in a permanent timeout, preferably in a corner far, far away, in order to fully surrender into forgiveness. Forgiveness of the past, of the present, and for the rest of your life. And I strongly feel that if we learn all of these steps, we learn to utilize all of the tools in that metaphorical toolbox, and then we teach them to others, who teach them to others, and so on, a world of peace is ensured. This is the kind of practice which shifts paradigms. So you new folks, you folks who've maybe taken a vacation, you're going to want to go and check those out. Give them a listen. And if you were here for the talks, maybe go back and listen again. Just keep the material fresh. I will probably do that too, even though I'm the one who writes them. Remember, we've got to stay firmly in each one of those steps if we want to experience profound change in our lives. And the world needs you to show them how. So everyone on our little planet can experience that profound change. And we can finally live from love, in peace and joy and permanent harmony. Who was here last Sunday? Yeah, a good number of you. That talk was pretty powerful, right? I have to admit, I have spent most of my week since then wondering how I was going to keep the big stuff moving. And since I usually just kind of pick a starting point and let the rest flow out onto the page until we arrive at a conclusion, I knew that the perfect talk would come together, but I couldn't find that starting point that I rely on. And although I have been staying present and open to inspiration, I couldn't seem to find anything in particular that spoke to me, that made me do some deep thinking until yesterday. Most of you know that I'm a boy mom. My husband Mike and I have 3 amazing, brilliant, perfect sons, Joey, Connor, and Luke, and all 3, they're incredible in every way, and we truly couldn't ask for better people to be our children. And I am blessed to be uniquely trusted by our boys with all of their young people business. They and many of their friends come to me and they tell me everything that's going on in their lives. And even when they tell me stuff that makes the mom in me a little uncomfy, I am grateful that they trust me the way they do. And maybe even more importantly, they ask me for my advice. And that's something that I don't take for granted because I remember being a kid. It was a while ago. And I remember feeling like my parents' advice was the last thing I wanted because there's no way they could understand what I was going through. Isn't it wonderful how things change as you grow up? Although I try not to bug them too often, my parents' minds are often my go-to sources of much-needed everyday wisdom and guidance now. But back then, not so much. Well, recently, one of my boys has been going through a bit of drama with friends. And each time my son updated me on a new development within the situation, it became more and more clear that quite literally all of the conflict could have been avoided if everyone involved did 4 things. Listened, asked questions, stopped assuming, and listened. Yes, I said that twice. That point needs reiterating. Everything in this scenario would have gone quite differently if listening had been active, because it seems like what began as an effort to be honest and forthcoming and avoid conflict turned into chaos simply because one person's immediate response was to go silent and cut off contact. It went from one sentence, which on its surface equated to, hey, I need to tell you this big thing that's going on because I want to be honest and transparent. I want you to know that you can trust me. And that was met with total silence. And shortly thereafter, this poor guy found that he was blocked from all communication, from phone number to every social media platform, period. That was the only reply. If true listening had been happening, I imagine the statement which kicked off this whole mess would have sounded more like what it really was under the surface. I just found out something that's really scary for me, but I love you. And I want you to walk through this with me so that we can both feel safe. Because that's what was actually being said. And it might have brought these two people closer together instead of driving them into respective solitude. So why didn't listening happen? Well, for starters, assumptions. There's other stuff, but we're not there yet, so stay with me here. What started out as a sincere desire to do what's right ended abruptly. At least at first blush, it seemed to. And in retrospect, I imagine the poor guy whose good intentions started this mess now wishes it had been that simple. Because although that second party has shut out the first, they've also let all kinds of outside parties in. And each of those parties are making their own assumptions and judgments and getting still others involved, all of whom make assumptions and judgments. And of course, all of that drama is being delivered through the grapevine back to our protagonist, who can't even try to explain himself because remember, thanks to modern technology, blocking contact with someone is pretty simple. And he discovered that fact quite recently. So now this has become the socio-emotional equivalent of a typhoon, which is spinning out of control and appears to be heading straight to one person's door. And of course, my mind has been going, if only I could get them to listen to this stuff that we're working on in church, because I see what's happening. And I see why it's happening. And I know that we've all figured out how to avoid most of these kinds of messes, until I realized that we haven't figured out how to avoid these kinds of messes. I mean, we've identified that the antidote to judgment is always love. We've learned that our opinions of others and others' opinions of us have created a huge fear of judgment in virtually everyone alive, and that when we're pointing fingers at others, what we're really trying to do is avoid looking at ourselves too closely. To avoid realizing that we are the ones responsible for what we're feeling And we've learned the incredibly powerful truth that we are all one, all the time. And that the power to recognize that oneness, despite our different opinions or confusing actions, is ours alone. And perhaps the biggest point from that last talk came to us from Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind on page 290, which I added a key element to. And that is, we must realize that there is one infinite mind which is consciously directing our destiny. Declare every day that no mistakes have been made, none are being made, and none can be made. Declare there is one supreme intelligence which governs, guides, and guards, tells me what to do, when to act, and how to act. To which I added, it is the same intelligence which guides and guards everyone else, and tells them what to do, when to act, and how to act. Observing this truth, I have no judgment about my actions or those of others. But although we've learned some really vitally powerful insights and observations, we haven't unlearned how to act like people living in this day and age. We haven't unlearned how we've been taught to listen. We haven't unlearned how we've been talking both to ourselves and to others. There's so much unlearning we've got to do if we want to have truly healthy relationships with everyone around us, if we want to experience permanent change in all of those areas of life that we've talked about so far. And there's so much unlearning the world's got to do if we want to see true and lasting peace and harmony and joy. And so I took a step back from that whole story to try and get some perspective. Where did this mess really begin? Where did it go off the rails? I mean, I could see pretty quickly that the first reaction was fear-based. But why? And asking the question of why is what revealed another truth. And you remember that part where I said we're not there yet? We're there now. Here's the deeper truth. Someone was hurt by past experiences, so they let their past define their present. We've all been there to one degree or another, right? We've all been hurt. We've all seen red flags and ignored them and maybe got hurt again. And the truth is, some of us, like it or not, have let that hurt shut us down. Some of us have decided that we'd rather be alone or be hardened than to allow ourselves to become vulnerable again. And while I know that we've tried really hard to let all of that mess go when we stepped into the now, maybe some people don't feel like they'll be safe if they let go of their past entirely. And yes, I am talking about the last series now. You really do have to go and check those out online to get to where we're headed. And to those folks who don't feel safe letting go of their past hurts, I counter that the only way to truly be safe is to let it go. If we've got this list of warning signs to look out for permanently tacked up in our line of sight, we can't truly see what's happening. And it's specifically because we can't see what's happening that we get hurt again. If we've got one eye and ear on our rules, ready to sound the tornado alarm at the first sign of a breeze, we've only got one eye and ear left that are open to living life in any real way. So no wonder we keep repeating those messes. We're so busy looking at our list of red flags, so busy listening to the repeat track of our rules and our watch out fors that we can't actually see what's happening or hear what's being said. And when we can't truly hear or see what's really real, we deny ourselves some amazing experiences. Experiences like discovering what honesty and honor actually look and feel like. Experiences like learning that sometimes what seems too good to be true is really just a small taste of the unfathomably immense good that's coming. And so it seems we've come to a moment I was rather hopeful we would, but one never knows. We have come to the intersection of now and judgment. When I was ordained here a while back, my mother-in-law, Kathy Nickel, gave me a wonderful book, and it's called Living Buddha, Living Christ by Zen Buddhist monk and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh. And it draws parallels between Christianity and Buddhism in incredibly beautiful ways. And I'd like to share this with you from pages 91 through 93. And before I do, I ask that whenever you hear the word killing, you replace it with harming. Because that, to me, is where the act of killing begins, with the harming of heart and mind. And it is that beginning of killing, that breaking of mind and heart, that we're seeking to move past today. And this is his wording of the first of the 5 wonderful precepts of Buddhism. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I vow to cultivate compassion and learn ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to condone any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, and in my way of life. Bless you. And he continues. The first precept is born from the awareness that lives everywhere are being destroyed. We see the suffering caused by the destruction of life, and we vow to cultivate compassion and use it as a source of energy for the protection of people, animals, plants, and minerals. No act of killing can be justified, and not to kill is not enough. We must also learn ways to prevent others from killing. We cannot condone any act of killing, even in our minds. According to the Buddha, the mind is the base of all actions. When you believe, for example, that yours is the only way for humankind, millions of people might be killed because of that idea. We have to look very deeply every day to practice this precept well. Every time we buy or consume something, we may be condoning some form of killing. And remember, killing for us today means harming. We're starting way back at the beginning. So every time we buy or consume something, perhaps something like news or social media, reality TV, gossip, every time we participate in or allow ourselves to be drawn into someone else's conflict without reason, no matter how mundane it may seem, anytime we're engaging in the world without full awareness of what we are doing, we may be condoning some form of harm. He goes on, to practice nonviolence, first of all, we must learn to deal peacefully with ourselves. In us, there is a certain amount of violence and a certain amount of non-violence. Depending on the state of our being, our response to things will be more or less nonviolent. With mindfulness, the practice of peace, or I'll add, with the practice of staying in the now, we can begin by working to transform the wars in ourselves. Conscious breathing helps us do this, but no one can practice this precept perfectly. We should not be too proud of being a vegetarian, for example. We must acknowledge that the water in which we boil our vegetables contains tiny microorganisms, not to mention the vegetables themselves. But even if we cannot be completely nonviolent, by being vegetarian, we are going in the direction of nonviolence. If we want to head north, we can use the North Star to guide us, but it is impossible to arrive at the North Star. Our effort is only to proceed in that direction. If we create one more time, if we create true harmony within ourselves and our mouths, we will know how to deal with family, friends, and society. Life is so precious, yet in our daily lives we are usually carried away by our forgetfulness, anger, and worries. The practice of the first precept is a celebration of reverence for life. When we appreciate and honor the beauty of life, we will make every effort to dwell deeply in the present moment and protect all life. So what does it mean to head toward the North Star of non-judgment? It means to stay present. When we address ourselves, our needs, wants, feelings, stay present. Stay present and honor the child within who has learned to hold on to memories of pain and danger, learned to hold on to painful, harmful emotions, and slowly, with love, teach that inner child who dwells in the quiet stillness of your mind that they don't have to feel those feelings anymore. That feeling them the first time was more than enough. That continuing to pull out the story those feelings are attached to, replaying it and reliving those feelings over and over, it isn't a way of making sure they're protected and safe. It's a way of hiding from the possibility of feeling anything new. It's not a way to prevent other hurt from happening. It's the way to prevent other learning from happening. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to feel. Honor those feelings, then hold them from your inner child's scared, tightly clenched fist so that they're finally able to reach into life, into the good gifts which have been waiting for them all along. Heading toward that North Star of non-judgment is listening, within and without, listening with feeling ears. Listen with awareness of how you feel as you do so. Mona Ross explained one way quite perfectly recently. She said, if you think of something and it makes you feel like you're expanding, you're growing. If it feels like you're pulling in, you're contracting, hardening, you're moving away from growth. Listen to others' words, but more than that, listen to what they're saying around those words. Listen without adding your own narration, without adding what you think they're saying, because often when we think someone's saying something more than the words coming out of their mouths, and especially when we think that something more isn't very nice, it's coming from that place of fear within us, brought about by past experiences with others. And if you find yourself unable to understand without adding your thoughts to their words, or should I say, without making judgments outside of their words, ask questions. Take time and make those questions important. Ask and listen until you truly understand. And I know this may feel daunting, but it's real and it's possible and beautiful and transformative if you just stay right here all the time and just do the things right here. Let me repeat that. It is possible if you just stay right here all the time and do the things right here. That sentence illustrates my point. If you listen to the words all by themselves and you don't know the things I've been teaching you will take my words to mean stay in this sanctuary right here on this campus forever and ever and only do stuff here, right? That's what the words say, isn't it? But most of you know me. Most of you have been to a few of these talks, and so without asking questions, you have the context to know what those words mean when I say them. And they mean stay in the moment, every moment. Stay here now. Do only that which is happening now. The more you do this consciously, the easier it becomes, until you find that you no longer have to make the conscious shift. You find that you're effortlessly in the present, presently doing only what's present. And you'll find that there's a presence of peace in the present, which makes the present a gift. Be present. Listen to the meaning of that which happens around you with an ear toward peace and harmony, never to harm or bring up harmful past emotions, yours or those around you. Ask and listen until the way of peace is clear. For within every conflict beats the heart of peace. Within all pain is a soul crying out for love. Within all sadness is a mind calling out for joy. Listen slowly, completely, until you can hear that peace, that love, that joy, that life radiating the light of God. Judge not. Be here now. Listen to the world. It's being reborn anew within you. Ask, and you'll find out how and when and why. You'll hear the answers in the quiet stillness of your soul as it expands, reaching out to give you more. Thank you.